Jill Savage and Matthew Peterson at America Fest, and joining us now is Noelle Mering. She's a fellow at the DC-based think tank Ethics and Public Policy Center. So Noelle, thanks so much for joining us. You're also an author, and we'll get to all of that work in just a minute. But let's just look at everything that's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. And I understand that you have an interest in faith and family and building that community. I don't think that D.C. could be further from the family and the faith and the community building. So how do you get these two worlds to come together?
Well, thank goodness I don't actually live in D.C., although there are good people there. But
some of them, I assume, are good people.
There are. I think that, we're experiencing a real transition now with the woke movement, not in defeat. We need to be cautious, but also optimistic. It's really, there's a lot of people have broken through the spell of the woke possession. And I think what's happening is it's an inversion of reality. It's been telling us for years everything that's good for us is actually really bad for us. Like your faith is bad for you, your family is bad for you, marriage is bad for you. And so, what's good for you, what's actually bad. And so people have induced into transgressive behavior. How can I be as transgressive as possible? And the problem is that always fails because it gets really boring. What's transgressive today is going to be boring tomorrow, and you can't keep pushing the envelope further and further, trying to make a king of your own pleasure, And so eventually, the movement is saying, well, let's just separate everything by profaning everything. Separate men from women, separate mothers from babies, especially unborn ones. And, I think it exposes itself after a while, but it is, it's a bit like coming out of a narcissistic personality spell where you've been distrustful of your own ability to perceive what's true. You've been manipulated, and once you realize it, you really can't unsee it any longer. And so I think that's a good source of optimism for us now.
So your last book was Awake, Not Woke.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's almost as if you're saying people are awakening, right? I mean, this is happening. Is that right? Because I feel the same way where I don't want to be over, like Jill and I talk about this on the show, I don't want to be overconfident, but it is an enormous win. Like the veils are lifting. But how do you look at it? Is it awake, not woke? Okay, so are we awake now?
I think that far more awake than we were a few years ago. I see a major sea change over the last couple of years, and certainly with the election, that is incredible victory. What the movement does not take its ball and go home. Real ideologues are power hungry, and they just reinvent themselves. So, for example, I think the biggest thing they're doing now that's corrupting our society is targeting children in a deep way. So you look at something like social emotional learning, where they're constantly asking kids, were your parents there for you? Are you safe? Do you feel like you belong? Has someone been unfair to you? Have someone hurt you? And we're training kids to have what I call a reverse examination of conscience, where we're training ourselves to examine everyone else's conscience. In other words, in order to induce people into victim mentality, you have to train them to become an accuser.
I look at this and say, okay, yes, people are lifting the veil. Things are happening in the right direction. But is this just the beginning of the battle? Where are we on this scale, on this journey of awakening at this point?
I think there's a lot of promising things happening. I mean, one of the cultural things I see shifting is that women are starting to want to be like women again. Men are starting to want to be more masculine. And one of the most important things I think we have to focus on is that, we don't want it just to be like sort of shallow avatars of masculinity and femininity. Part of the conflict theory's victory is that it keeps things really shallow and stupid. And stupidity is the point. So what we need to do is we need to really deeply embody these things. What does it really mean to be a good father? What does it really mean to be a good mother? Those things are incredibly powerful, and it takes a mountain of propaganda to pull them away from us. So we need to reclaim them with a lot of confidence, and also, let our lives be models for other people. And also new media, Frontier, my other project, Theology of Home. We have books and a lifestyle magazine and brand. These things are important to show people this is what a good life looks like. They haven't been shown it for decades.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I mean, at least one origin story. You probably have multiple. For Noelle is the book with your co-author, Theology at Home, which I just assumed sold like, a billion copies because everyone I know has it. And the second one, because there was a sequel. But could you go back to that? Because I think the success of that and then the products you guys sell with Theology at Home is very interesting. But how did it start? Like, what was the genesis of that?
Well, Carrie Gress, my co-author, she came up with the phrase Theology of Home, and we've just been thinking about how do we help women to see that motherhood is actually a really beautiful calling, that being at home with your children can be a really beautiful, meaningful, purposeful life, when for decades it's been drilled into them that it's a waste of their gifts, that they're going to be oppressed and their husband's going to be domineering. And how do we show the actual beauty of this life that we're experiencing and so many of our friends are experiencing? And so we thought, the left has seeded ideology into their media for decades. Cosmopolitan magazine showing women can never be a mother, can never be a virgin, that you have to be promiscuous in order to be powerful. All of these lifestyle lies. And so we thought, how do we counter that with beautiful media that actually presents a powerful vision of what women and men can be?
Just I would say, what I like about those books too is just positive. It's like laying out, like, here's the theology of a house, and like what what goes on within the family, and then the beauty of the pictures, etc. And that positive vision is just so important, and that's, I'm glad you mentioned Frontier. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
But we should put something in the next frontier from you, because it's very much the same vibes. But let's go to the future real quick. What's your next book? Because I think it relates to sort of the next battle that you were talking about in the beginning with children.
Yeah, so I'm writing and researching right now about a new movement happening called the Going No Contact movement, where, adult children most often are going no contact with their parents and their families over really ideological reasons. And I think it mimics a lot of the Marxist kind of oppressor-oppressed categories, where children start to see themselves as not only oppressed by their parents, but also infallible in their decision to diagnose their parents as toxic, as narcissists, or what have you. Now, sometimes that's true, sometimes that's real, but there are millions of forums online now with a lot of ideological agendas and also financial incentives to keep young adults really in a place of antagonism with their parents, in order, I think, to do like a sort of a parasite. It's like killing off the father and the mother. And this is an old plan, the abolition of the family, and they try it in various different forms. They've been trying with school children, K through 12, but this is the newest form, I think, that it's taking place, and it deserves to be examined.
Where do you see this attack on the family going? Because they have been doing it for decades. We've seen this, and I think that people are they're starting to at least wake up to the old ways, right? They're noticeable now, and you can say, oh, I can identify that, I can see what they're doing. But where does it go? Because that it's really a good versus evil battle, and they're not going to stop, because the family is that nucleus that everything will revolve around.
Yeah, I think that they just will try various forms of manipulation. They always happen in 3 stages: pity, and then fear, and then force. This is how ideologies manipulate you. And pity, that's the one where, the children are going to be seen as being, their full freedom is not being able to be lived out. And this is what they did with the trans movement. It's what they're doing with social emotional learning in certain cases, and this is what's happening with the no contact movement. It's really tempting, because it appeals to a universal temptation that we all have, to see that all of our problems are external from ourselves. That if I could just change everything but myself, then my life will be happy. There's a pleasure in that, but it makes us really irate. It makes a society that's roiling in conflict. But once you see that ideology right in the heart of the family, between parents and children, you can really explode the health and wholesomeness of the family. And then society is a ripple effect.
Is the goal to explode this ideology? What is the first thing that needs to happen? Is it the parents waking up then and realizing, oh my gosh, this is what they're trying to do, and seeing it clearly? Is it the child also? Because I assume, for teenagers, right, they would need to see, this is what they're doing to me. But it sounds like you're primarily parents focused.
Yeah, I think parents first and foremost need to be on the front lines of understanding what's happening, so that they can be aware of, this happening at the schools, but also what's happening online. These forums are reaching kids, and they are spreading these ideas, really rapidly. And there's a real social contagion happening. So I think parents first and foremost need to take the reins over this, but also young adults too. I think that we need to train them that, it's not it's not a flourishing message to think that I'm a victim of my circumstances, or that my parents are not an avenue for my good. Actually, this is the promise of stability. We have a loneliness epidemic for decades now, but now what we're seeing is people who are, going through life without the actual safety net that they should have, this buffer of support throughout their life when they're in crisis, emotional or physical or sickness or what have you. So I think that young adults are capable of seeing this manipulation as well, and we need to help them to see it as well.
So Noelle, where can people pick up Awake Not Woke, and where can people follow you?
Theology.home, theologyofhome.com, and eppc.org are the best places.
Excellent. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.